The smell of disinfectant clung to the air, sharp and sterile, like the memory of fear that wouldn't wash off. The nurse had just left, the soft squeak of her shoes fading down the hall. I stared at the 4-line in my arm, the steady drip-drip echoing against the hum of fluorescent lights. My head throbbed in rhythm with the heartbeat monitor beside me. The accident hadn't been dramatic, not the kind that ends lives, but enough to shake mine for a moment. A truck ran a red light, my car spun, glass shattered, and then everything went still. Now, sitting here in a hospital gown, bruised and dazed, I did something I hadn't done in years. I reached for my phone. I typed slowly, thumb trembling. Need a ride from the ER. Anyone around? 3 dots blinked for a second, then disappeared. A part of me almost laughed. Of course. Why would they? I hadn't spoken to my parents in over a year. My brother, Jason, even longer. The irony stung. I built an entire life around not needing them, and now, for the first time in forever, I did. The screen buzzed. A text. Jason, where exactly are you? I stared at it for a full minute before replying. The thought of seeing him, the brother who once told me I'd never make it alone, sent a rush of something between fear and pride through my chest. When I finally heard the rumble of his familiar pickup outside, my fingers tightened around the hospital blanket. For the first time in years, I wasn't sure what hurt more, the accident or the idea of facing him again. 5 years earlier, I was standing in the middle of our kitchen in Maplewood, clutching a half-filled duffel bag while my father's voice thundered across the room. You're being ridiculous, Olivia. Nobody makes a living taking photos of strangers and sunsets. You need a real career. His words bounced off the cabinets, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. My mother stayed silent at the sink, scrubbing a plate that was already spotless, her way of pretending she wasn't part of this. And then Jason chimed in. Dad's right, Liv. You've got no plan. You're impulsive. You can't just run off to New York with a camera and think life will magically work out. That sentence, you can't, dug into me deeper than anything else. I remember gripping the strap of my duffel tighter, feeling my knuckles whiten. I'm not asking you to believe in me, I said quietly. I just need you to stop standing in my way. Jason laughed under his breath, that smug, older brother kind of laugh. You'll come crawling back in 6 months. The lump in my throat burned, but I refused to let the tears fall. I turned toward the doorway, and that's when I felt a soft, trembling hand touch mine. My grandmother, Eleanor, small, silver-haired, her eyes sharp as ever, slipped a thin silver bracelet into my palm. Keep it close, she whispered. It's not about proving them wrong, sweetheart. It's about proving yourself right. That was the last kindness I felt in that house. I shoved the bracelet onto my wrist, hoisted the bag higher, and walked out the door into the thick July air. The cicadas were screaming, the pavement burned under my sneakers, and my heart pounded so hard it almost drowned out my father's final words. Words he didn't even yell, just muttered low and cold. She'll be back when the world breaks her. But the world didn't break me. It just bent me, reshaped me. That night, as the bus rolled toward the city lights, I stared at my reflection in the window. My eyes were red, my hands shaking, but there was a strange spark inside me, the kind that comes when you've lost everything except your will to fight. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I wasn't going back. The first year in New York nearly broke me. My apartment was a converted storage room above a laundromat in Queens. One window, no heat in the winter, no AC in the summer. The walls smelled like detergent and loneliness. I worked at a cafe by day and took photos by night, chasing light between buildings and faces that told stories more honest than any words. Every night I'd fall asleep with aching feet and sore wrists, but I kept my camera close, like armor. I'd scroll through photos, rain hitting glass, an old man feeding pigeons, a woman laughing under neon, and think, maybe this is worth something. Maybe I am. Then, one evening, a woman named Mara Delaney walked into the cafe. She was the kind of woman people turn to look at. Sharp suit, calm eyes, not a hair out of place. I didn't know she was a creative director at a boutique ad agency. I just served her latte with a shaky smile. She noticed the camera strap around my neck. You any good? She asked, half teasing. I showed her a few shots on my phone. She studied them for a long moment, then said, You've got an eye. Come by our office tomorrow. I might have something for you. I almost dropped her coffee. That moment changed everything. Mara became my first real mentor. She taught me how to pitch my ideas, how to price my work, how to walk into a room full of men in suits and not shrink. Talent means nothing if you whisper, she'd say. I started taking freelance gigs, product shoots, small campaigns, portraits. The money wasn't much, but the respect was. For the first time, people saw me as capable. Still, I kept my success quiet. My family followed me on social media, and I made sure every post looked modest. A cup of coffee, a skyline, a random alley. Never a hint of the studio, the magazine features, or the clients who now trusted my name. There was a strange comfort in being invisible to them, because as long as they thought I was struggling, I didn't owe them proof. Then, 2 years in, my work caught fire. One campaign went viral, a photo series about women who rebuilt their lives after failure. I called it resilience. The irony wasn't lost on me. The series got picked up by a national brand. Suddenly, I had investors, a small team, and my own studio, Bennett Creative and Company. I remember the day I signed the lease. The building smelled like fresh paint and hope. I stood in the middle of that empty white space, sunlight pouring through the windows, and whispered to myself, You did it, Liv. You actually did it. But I didn't tell a soul from home. Not even Grandma Eleanor. The bracelet on my wrist had dulled with time, the silver now soft and scratched, but I still touched it every morning before work. It reminded me why I started, not to prove them wrong, but to stay true to the girl who left with nothing but belief. And maybe that's why, even after the accident, I couldn't bring myself to call them. Because after all these years, I didn't know if I wanted them to see the woman I'd become, or if I was still afraid they wouldn't care. Jason didn't say much on the drive from the ER. The rhythmic wiper blades tapped against the windshield, pushing away light drizzle. I watched the city lights blur past, amber, white, red, all bleeding together like memories I wasn't sure I wanted to revisit. He glanced at me a few times. You okay? Yeah, I said quietly. Just bruised. He nodded, knuckles tightening on the steering wheel. You're lucky. Could have been worse. I wanted to say I know, but something in his tone made me pause. He wasn't just talking about the accident. He was talking about my life, the one he still thought was a mess. When we reached the downtown district, he frowned. I think you gave me the wrong address. No, that's it, I murmured, pointing to the corner building with the slate-gray facade and gold lettering that read, Bennett Creative and Company. He slowed the truck, disbelief spreading across his face. Wait, you work here? I smiled faintly. Something like that. He followed me through the rain into the lobby. The air smelled of lavender and fresh paper. My receptionist, Dana, looked up from her desk. Ms. Bennett, glad you're okay. I rescheduled tomorrow's shoot. Jason's eyes snapped toward me. Ms. Bennett. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head as I led him upstairs. The elevator chimed softly, opening into a space that had once been my dream. High ceilings, exposed brick, framed photographs lining the walls. My photographs. Jason walked slowly, his hand brushing the edge of a frame showing a woman smiling through cracked glass. These are yours. Yeah, I said, setting my hospital papers on my desk. All of them. He turned to face me, his jaw slack. Liv, this is your studio? My company, I corrected gently. I built it 3 years ago. The silence that followed was heavy, not angry, just stunned. I could see him piecing together all the years he'd thought I was failing, all the times I never reached out, all the times he'd probably told people I'd burned out in the city. Finally, he exhaled. I had no idea. I know. He took a slow step closer, eyes darting to the name etched in glass on the door. Olivia Bennett, founder and creative director. Why didn't you tell us? He asked, voice low. I looked at him for a long moment before answering. Because when I left, you told me I'd come crawling back. And I couldn't live my life waiting to prove you wrong. I needed to prove myself right. He nodded, shame flickering in his expression. Dad, he said things too. We both did. We just didn't believe I'd make it. I finished for him. Jason swallowed hard, staring at the floor.
Yeah.
I leaned against my desk, exhaustion settling in. You know what's funny? I used to replay that night in my head like a bad movie. Every time things got hard, I'd hear Dad's voice. Yours too. It pushed me harder than you'll ever know. He looked up, eyes glistening. Liv, It's okay, I said softly. You don't have to say anything. I'm not angry anymore. He turned slowly, taking in every corner of the studio, the success, the art, the quiet confidence that filled the space. You really did it, he whispered. Yeah, I said, smiling faintly. I did. And for the first time since I was 22, I watched my brother look at me not as a reckless dreamer, but as someone who had finally, undeniably, made it. Jason sat across from me on the leather couch in my office, still trying to catch up with the reality around him. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes darting toward the large framed photo behind my desk, a shot of me standing in a storm, camera in hand, lightning slicing the sky. It was from the Resilient series. He probably recognized it from the magazine cover, but never imagined it was mine. I don't even know what to say, he muttered. You've done everything we said you couldn't. I smiled softly.
Yeah.
I guess I did. He rubbed the back of his neck. Dad, he's been different lately. Mom, too. I think losing touch with you hit them harder than they admitted. And then when you stopped coming home for holidays. I stopped because I wasn't welcome, I interrupted gently. He nodded, guilt flickering across his face. You're right. We didn't make it easy. I wish I'd said something sooner. I studied him, the tired lines around his eyes, the weariness in his voice. It wasn't the same arrogant tone from years ago. This was a man carrying regret. He finally asked, So, what happens now? You want to see them again? I took a breath. The air felt thick. Maybe. But not like before. I'm not the same girl who left, Jason. I won't walk back into that house pretending I'm still small. He nodded slowly, then hesitated. Can I be honest? Always. I need a job. Things haven't been good. The family business is falling apart. I figured I could ask around, maybe you'd know someone. That old instinct, the one that used to make me say yes just to keep the peace, stirred for a moment.
But I caught it this time.
I do know someone, I said after a pause. Me. His eyes widened slightly. But, I continued, I don't hire out of guilt, Jason. If you want to work here, there are conditions. He straightened up, surprised. Conditions?
Yes.
3, actually. I lifted my hand, counting them off slowly. First, you start from the bottom. No title, no office. You'll work with my production team and learn what it means to build something from scratch. Second, you show respect to every single person here, regardless of who they are or what they earn. And third, when you go home, you remind Dad that the daughter he called reckless turned her dream into a company that employs 20 people. Jason blinked, caught between awe and shame. You'd really give me a chance? I'm not giving you a chance, I said softly. I'm offering you growth. Same thing I fought for. He nodded slowly, voice cracking just a little. You sound just like Grandma Eleanor. I smiled, glancing at the dull silver bracelet on my wrist. She taught me well. The silence that followed wasn't awkward this time. It was heavy, but healing. 2 siblings sitting in the same room for the first time in years, not as enemies, but as 2 people finally understanding what the other had survived. Jason exhaled, his voice low.
Thank you, Liv.
Really? I stood and opened the office door. Orientation starts Monday. Don't be late. He gave a small, sheepish grin, the kind I hadn't seen since we were kids, and nodded. For the first time, I didn't feel like the little sister trying to prove herself. I felt like the woman who finally owned her story. 2 months later, the studio felt different. The air was lighter, not just from the new spring sunlight spilling through the windows, but from something softer, something human. Jason kept his word. He showed up every morning before I did, coffee in hand, dressed like someone determined to start over. He didn't ask for special treatment. He earned respect the same way I once had, by doing the work. Sometimes, I'd catch him staring at the framed photos on the wall, the ones that told stories about strength and redemption. I could tell he finally understood that art wasn't just pictures, it was survival. One Friday evening, as everyone packed up for the weekend, he stopped by my office door. "Mom and Dad want to come by next week," he said carefully. They want to see you. No lectures, no drama. Just to see you." I didn't answer right away. For years, I'd imagined that moment, them walking in, realizing the daughter they underestimated had built something extraordinary. I thought it would feel like victory. But now, it just felt peaceful.
Tell them they can, I said.
But not to expect the girl who left. "She's long gone." Jason nodded, a soft smile playing at his lips.
"Yeah.
"I think they know." After he left, I sat at my desk, the city glowing outside the window. All those lives and lights moving in rhythm. My gaze fell on the bracelet resting beside my keyboard. The silver had faded, the engraving nearly gone, but I still traced it with my thumb. "Know who you are." Grandma's words echoed in my chest like a heartbeat. She never saw what I built. She passed the year before resilience took off, but somehow, I think she knew I'd find my way here. I slipped the bracelet back onto my wrist, the metal cool against my skin, and smiled. The accident had been a jolt, yes, a collision of metal and fate, but it had also been a reminder. A reminder that I wasn't unbreakable, just unyielding. And when I texted my family that night from the ER, I realized something beautiful. I hadn't reached out because I was weak. I reached out because I was strong enough to. As I turned off the lights and locked the studio, my reflection in the glass door caught my eye. I looked steady.
Whole.
In the quiet night air, I whispered the truth that had taken me years to earn. I didn't need a ride home that night. I just needed to see if they'd still come.